I'm a cop, and I enforce the government's dark secrets. Here are our 3 creepy rules. I never should have opened that door. The chill that washed over me was immediate, like ice water down my spine. It was just another day at the precinct, coffee brewing, the scent of stale donuts filling the air. My partner, Sam, was cracking jokes in the break room. It felt normal. But then, the call came through. I should have known better. The sergeant's voice crackled on the radio, a tense urgency wrapping around his words. Something was off. They found an old building on the outskirts of town. No one dared to go inside. A place whispered about in the dark. My gut twisted. Slipping on my jacket, I felt it. The weight of dread settled in my chest like a lead ball. The shadows seemed longer, stretching towards me as I stepped into the frigid night air. The moon hung low, its light barely penetrating the thick mist that clung to the ground. The building loomed ahead, a hunched figure against the night sky. Its windows were shattered, gaping like the mouths of skulls. I could hear the raspy whispers, a language I didn't recognize. My heart raced. Driven by curiosity, I pushed the door open, the screech of the rusty hinges slicing through the silence. Inside, it was cold. The air smelled musty, like rotting wood, and something metallic. Darkness enveloped me, closing in. I flicked on my flashlight, beams dancing across the graffiti-stained walls. They seemed to writhe and laugh in the flickering light. A chill ran through me. Then I heard it. A soft rustle, like fabric brushing against itself. I froze, holding my breath. My pulse pounded in my ears. Just the wind, I told myself. Just the wind. But even as I thought it, a shadow slipped past the corner of my vision. I swung my light toward it, but there was nothing. I inched deeper. The floor creaked under my feet, echoing my growing anxiety. I could feel a presence, something lurking just beyond my sight. Goosebumps raced down my arms. I was not alone. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to run. But I was a cop. I couldn't turn back. Then a crash echoed through the building. My heart stopped. I whirled around, aiming my flashlight toward the sound. The beam swept across the room until it landed on a door at the far end, slightly ajar. It swung gently, as if beckoning me. I took a step forward, but then I heard it again, a whisper, barely audible, pulling me closer. Help me, it was a voice, chilling and sweet, like sugar-coated poison. My throat tightened. I hesitated, heart pounding. I couldn't resist. I took another step, another. The door creaked louder, the darkness beyond it promising secrets I had no right to uncover. Just as I reached for the handle, a figure materialized in the shadows. My heart raced, then suddenly went cold. Panic exploded inside me. Who are you? I shouted. But the figure just stared, eyes glinting in the light like shards of glass. Then everything went black. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness was thick, a suffocating blanket that pressed against my skin. My flashlight flickered erratically as panic washed over me. Adrenaline surged through my veins, and I focused on that sliver of light, straining to pierce the shadow that had swallowed me. My heart thundered in my chest. I was disoriented, lost in a maze formed by my own fear that I swung my flashlight around again. But the beam revealed nothing. Just the dilapidated room, with peeling paint and the remnants of a faded existence, discarded chairs, shattered glass, remnants of furniture long since forgotten. The only thing that remained was that chilling whisper that wrapped around my mind like a vice. Help me, who's there? I called out, trying to steady my voice, forcing a bravado I didn't feel. What met my ears was an unsettling silence, as if the very building held its breath, waiting for me to screw up the courage to step forward. I took a step back toward the door I'd entered, but the shadows shifted. A cold wind swept through the corridor, jarring the silence, and I was hit by a sudden wave of despair, a visceral urge to retreat. I glanced back toward where the figure had been, but it was gone, leaving nothing but a sickly residue of enduring dread in its place. Then I noticed something on the floor. a dark stain, almost black against the rotting wood, creeping like a shadow, stretching toward me. It wasn't the form of a liquid, but an outline. A figure, almost human, the curvature of a body etched into the ground but devoid of color or texture. I blinked, mind racing. I wanted to look away, but something drew me. I knelt closer. The air grew frigid, and the whispers transformed into an anguished wail, echoing through the very structure like the cries of lost souls trapped within its walls. I slammed my fist against my temple, trying to clear my head as I forced my gaze away. I had to focus, had to remain rational. That I could hear Sam's voice in my mind, teasingly pushing me forward, reminding me of all those times we chased down leads into the dark, shadowy corners of humanity. But this wasn't that. This was something else. It felt ancient, feral, and unspeakably hungry. In that moment of hesitation, I heard it again. "Help me stop it." I shouted involuntarily, my voice bouncing off the walls, but the cries only intensified, growing in urgency. I couldn't tell if they were pleas or threats, each syllable laced with raw desperation. I stumbled backward, bumping into a splintered desk that toppled over with a resounding crash, the sound swallowed by the hungry void. Just as I regained my bearings, a subtle movement at the corner of my eye caught my attention. I turned, flashlight pinning down the darkness as the beam landed on a series of old, rusted chains hanging from the ceiling. They seemed to sway slightly, as if something attached to them had only just been dragged away. My pulse quickened, the implication twisting in my gut like a dagger. As if on cue, something heavy bound by those chains drew near, a silhouette slicing through the blackness, and I barely drew breath as it stepped into the beam of light, a ghastly figure with hollowed cheeks and sunken eyes, skin stretched tight over thin bones, gaping mouth opening wide, as if to scream. But no sound came out. I stumbled back in terror, the flashlight flickering, my world spiraling into chaos as the whispers reached a fever pitch. "Help me, help me!" Suddenly, the chains rattled violently. I felt a pull, a tide pushing me closer to that horrific apparition, and in one heart-stopping moment, the light flickered out altogether, engulfing me in absolute darkness. I was a loner, so I thought. Against the encroaching silence, a voice slithered through the air, chilling me to my core, a promise of terror I'd rather not keep. "You can't leave now, officer." "Not yet." Before I could process the words, warmth spilled down my cheek, and I realized the truth too late. I was not bleeding from a wound. I was drenched in darkness itself, drawn deeper into a nightmare I couldn't escape. The darkness wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, oppressive and thick with the stench of mildew and despair. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, but the sounds, the whispers, the chains echoed through the void, weaving a tapestry of dread that curled around my spine. My breath hitched, each exhale trembling in the suffocating silence, as I tried to make sense of my surroundings. "Why can't I leave?" I murmured to myself, trying to anchor my sanity against the tide of mounting fear. A response slithered through the shadows, the voice softer this time, yet piercing with a menacing clarity. "You must understand, not everyone who enters this place gets to leave." I craned my neck, straining to find the source, and suddenly felt an ice-cold draft snake its way up my legs, leaving a trail of goosebumps in its wake. My instincts screamed at me to run, to find the exit, but a paralyzing dread held my feet to the ground, as if I were being weighed down by the very fabric of the darkness itself. The chains rattled once again, and the sound seemed to resonate with a deep, throaty laugh that echoed in my mind. Panic flooded my senses. I shook my head violently, trying to scatter the encroaching shadows and push away the chilling question. How many had come before me? Out of the silence, a low groan emerged, followed by a series of agonizing screams that pierced the oppressive atmosphere like shards of glass. They surged and receded, a symphony of suffering that echoed the anguish of souls bound to this cursed place. The weight on my chest grew heavier with each wail. I was drawn deeper into their despair, feeling their torment seep into my bones. That I closed my eyes, focusing on the rhythmic pattern of my breathing. It was a mantra, a desperate plea for control in an environment intent on unraveling me. But the moment I opened them, the darkness shifted. It felt alive, pulsating with a sinister energy that thrummed beneath the surface. Shapes began to coalesce, ghostly figures forming in the edges of my vision, their faces twisted in unearthly agony, frozen into me a gallery of horror trapped within the walls. "Help me," one of the figures whispered, their mouth moving in a grotesque imitation of life, and I stumbled backward, guilt surging through me. What was I supposed to do? I wasn't prepared for this. The chilling laughter returned, melding with a cacophony of whispers, and I clutched my flashlight with trembling hands, determined to pierce the dark once more. I flicked it on, the beam cutting through the void, illuminating the chilling tableau before me. The room pulsed with a strange luminescence, revealing remnants of the past-torn photographs hanging at odd angles, their subjects long lost to time, scattered toys caked in dust, their innocence corrupted, and the chains, rusted and heavy, adorned with tokens of despair, rusty keys, broken watches, remnants of lives once lived. Suddenly, amongst the agony, a clearer voice broke through the madness, a child's voice laced with raw fear and unmistakable urgency. "Help me! Help us!" My heart sank as I followed the sound, blinding myself to the apparitions surrounding me. I took a step forward, drawn like a moth to a flame, but as I reached for the flickering echo of innocence, the chains rattled violently again, as if warning me to turn back. "Stay away." The ghostly figures wailed, their eyes filled with a deep, nagging desperation, but I was too far gone, ensnared by the heart-wrenching cries of the unseen. I lunged forward, colliding with what felt like a cold wall of air, and the darkness thickened, swirling around me in malicious delight. The laughter intensified, reverberating through my skull like a twisted symphony. Then everything shifted. A sharp pain sliced through my shoulder, and the light I held flickered again, casting distorted shadows that danced cruelly across the walls. I twisted to escape, and that's when I felt its fingers, ice-cold and clammy, gripping my arm with a vice-like grip. I turned, and as the flashlight flickered back on, it revealed the remnants of a facia child, gaunt and hollow-eyed, trembling with fear and a deeply familiar sorrow. "You shouldn't have come here, officer," it whispered, voice echoing with untold sorrow. "You're part of the darkness now." Before I could retreat, the child vanished, along with my grip on reality. I was left alone once more, and the chains clanged like impatient heartbeats, every sound echoing the growing terror within me. I could feel its presence, the weight of 1,000 souls pressing in, devouring my spirit as I heard the quiet clicks and rustles of something moving just beyond the light. With my heart racing, I realized I was not just surrounded by them. They were circling closer and closer. "Help me," they chanted in unison, and the air grew thicker with dread. The flashlight sputtered, then went out. A deep, unnatural silence fell, and my thoughts spiraled into madness. What waited just beyond the veil of darkness? A sudden, wrenching pain surged through my chest, and I gasped, feeling the icy grip constricting around me as I was squeezed into the depths of the unknown. "Help us, you can't leave." Suddenly, everything fell away, and I was pulled into the screaming darkness, the cacophony silencing as I felt myself being dragged into the void, my desperate pleas jarring against a deeper silence. Just before I lost consciousness, the last thing I heard was that child's voice once more, hauntingly clear in the abyss, whispering the truth I feared to learn. "Now you're one of us." The void twisted, a visceral maelstrom of anguish and confusion engulfing me, tearing at the very fabric of my identity. I struggled against its pull, aware of the cold tendrils that sought to weave me into the tapestry of their suffering. As consciousness wavered, fragmented memories danced just beyond my grasp, images of a sunlit day, laughter echoing through the world, the warmth of human connection. But those fleeting glimpses of normalcy were eclipsed by the consuming shadows of despair that surrounded me. Darkness wrapped around my limbs, and though I fought it, the swirling nightmare began to obliterate who I was. With a gasp, I was thrust back into awareness, the icy air around me stinging like a lash against exposed skin. I was no longer in the room of anguish. Instead, I found myself in a warped corridor, the walls a sickly hue of green, pulsating as if they held a heartbeat of their own. Faint whispers wafted through the air, playful yet cruel, reverberating in an indecipherable tongue that set my teeth on edge. The corridor was alive with the remnants of lost souls, echoing their stories in a horrific amalgamation of laughter and cries. With each tentative step, I felt the weight of their gazes, an invisible pressure that demanded my attention. Shadows lengthened into grotesque shapes that danced just outside my peripheral vision, teasing and tormenting with every flickering moment of my flashlight. Find us, or we'll find you. The whispers taunted, slithering into my mind like serpents, wrapping tighter around my thoughts that I stumbled forward, half driven by desperation, half by the insistent need to uncover the truth beneath this nightmare. The floor beneath me warped into uneven tiles, slick with something dark and viscous. I fought the urge to recoil. Each squelching step drew me deeper into this wretched maze. A door stood ajar at the end of the corridor, flickering light spilling out, drawing me closer with a warped glow of hope. But as I approached, a deafening silence enveloped me once more, a world devoid of sound, as if the walls were holding their breath. An unsettling chill crawled up my spine as I reached for the door, the handle clammy to the touch. "Oh, not open that door." A voice rang clear in the void, echoing with urgency. I spun around to see a figure materialize before me, an elderly woman, her eyes wide with terror, a cautionary finger pressed to her lips. "You must escape. Do you not see what lies beyond?" I shook my head, confusion mixing with fear. "What do you know? Who are you?" "I am what remains," she whispered, the tremor in her voice spiraling through the darkness like a fraying thread. "I came here seeking the truth, but it betrayed me, dragged my soul into its depths. They'll swallow you whole if you let them. As she spoke, the air thickened around us, an oppressive weight I could almost feel clinging to my skin. I turned back to the door, the light still beckoning like a siren. "But there's something in there, something important. I have to know. Never question the shadows that whisper promises of salvation," she warned, her gaze darting nervously toward the door. "It's a trap, a lure. You'll regret it." Before I could respond, the walls around us shook, vibrating with a low, ominous rumble. The lights flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that morphed into menacing figures, pointed fingers reaching out hungrily. "Leave. You're being watched." The woman screamed as her form flickered, her warning dissipating like mist under sunlight. I felt a surge of panic rising within me, and my instincts screamed for escape. But the door called, aglow with the promise of answers and freedom, while the shadows howled along the walls, warping reality with their relentless grasp. In a moment of desperation, I reached out, heart pounding, and twisted the handle. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a blinding light within. I stepped forward, but as the darkness tried to pull me back, something seized my arm with vice-like strength. The figures cowled in shadows surged forward, and a chorus of voices erupted. "You shouldn't have come." The room transformed around me as I fell through the portal, pulled into a new realm of blinding brilliance that contrasted violently against the suffocating darkness behind. My heart raced as I tumbled into the unknown, my body colliding with something hard. As I blinked against the light, the scene unraveling before me sent waves of horror crashing against my psyche. I was in a decrepit room filled with mirrors, each one reflecting countless versions of me, twisted and grotesque incarnations that smiled sadistically back at me. And behind me, muffled voices called from the darkness, coaxing and promising salvation. "Join us, we are never alone." I turned to flee, but as I stepped back into the corridor I had just escaped, the whispers crescendoed around me. "You're ours now, forever." And then, one final mirror cracked, splintering the glass. I was trapped. In that perilous instant, I saw the figure of the child within, his tear-streaked face mouthing a single word that chilled my blood. "Run." The shard of reflection glinted ominously, a jagged smile within the chaos. The moment paused, suspended on the precipice of calamity, and the shadows surged forward, twisting the air around me like gnashing teeth. My heart thundered in my chest, drowning out the wails that echoed, merging with the sinister laughter of tortured souls. "Join us, we are never alone," the chorus persisted, a hypnotic repetition that made my skin crawl. "Run." The child in the mirror-me reflection, or the warped version of what I once was, pleaded with a desperate intensity. His wide, frightened eyes mirrored my own panic, and I could almost feel the chill of his despair wrapping around my throat like a noose. My instincts kicked in, propelled by a visceral terror that felt alien, primal. I turned sharply, propelled beyond conscious thought, sprinting down the corridor with the whispers clawing at my back. The pulsating walls distorted, trapping me in a relentless game of cat and mouse. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, a sickly green light pulsating in time with my racing heartbeat. Stay with us. The whispers morphed into a cacophony of voices, their shrieks merging with guttural growls that sent shivers rippling through my spine. With each desperate stride, I felt a cold breath against my neck, a taunting promise of capture that echoed in the depths of my mind. Suddenly, a shadow lunged across my path, a dark figure emerging from the walls, arms outstretched with claw-like fingers. I jerked aside, narrowly avoiding a grasp that could shatter the meager illusion of safety I clung to. My legs carried me forward, frantic but determined, surging toward the next door that loomed before me, lurking with the same sickly glow that I flung myself against it, heaving it open with all the strength I could muster. The room beyond was vast and industrial, concrete walls lined with rusted machinery and broken equipment that hinted of forgotten experiments and dark intentions. Pipes creaked with the burden of secrets they could no longer contain. Flickering lights overhead sparked sporadically, illuminating pools of darkness that writhed on the outskirts of perception. Stepping inside, I turned to slam the door behind me, only to find that it had vanished, replaced by a cold, impenetrable wall. My breath quickened as the sole sound I could hear was the ominous ticking of a clock somewhere deep within the structure, each tick reverberating through the silence like a death knell. "Welcome, seeker," a voice purred from the shadows. I spun around, my eyes darting, searching for the source. A figure emerged, no more than a silhouette at first, morphing into a woman draped in shadow and sorrow. Her expression was unnaturally serene, too calm in a place filled with dread. "You're so close to the truth." "What truth?" I stammered, tension squeezing my throat like an iron grip. "What is all this?" "The truth that binds us, that binds you." She stepped closer, her presence both alluring and terrifying. With each movement, I could see her skin rippling, the contours of her face shifting as if she were a living tapestry. "You wish to uncover the secrets the government hides, but some secrets are crafted from flesh and bone. Get away from me." I backed up, hitting the cold concrete wall, piercing fear coursing through my veins. "Oh, sweet child, there is no escape," she cooed, a wicked smile curling her lips. "You've already stepped into the abyss. They were watching you the moment your curiosity peaked, shadowed you with every misstep. You're a conduit now, whether you want to be or not." A rumble shivered through the foundation, and the lights above flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that swirled around the room. Panic clawed at my mind as I remembered the warning. I was being hunted. "What do you want from me?" I rasped, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a frenzied beast. "To expose the darkest corners of the world," she replied, her voice weaving around me like silk, hypnotic and terrifying. "You must decide. Will you confront your fears, or let them consume you like the others before?" In that moment, shadows began to coalesce around her, dark tendrils stretching out like fingers, curling toward me with deceptive gentleness, yet teetering on the edge of violence. My breaths quickened, body taut with a fear that threatened to unmoor me completely. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the depths of the room, a loud clanging that reverberated through the concrete like an angry heartbeat. The woman's expression shifted, fear lining her face as she gazed into the open void of the shadows. "Not now. You don't know what you're doing," she shrieked, the shadows momentarily recoiling from her command. But I could hear Ida's low growl, a throaty murmur stirring the darkness, and I felt the walls pulsing with an echo of ancient, hungry forces. Instincts screamed at me to run, yet a horrible sense of fascination urged me to discover what lay beyond the veil of shadows. The growling intensified, a beast awakening within the depths. Fastening loose fractions of my will, I turned to face the howling void. "I will find out the truth, whatever it takes." And in that moment, a chilling whisper filled the room, harmonizing with 1,000 tortured souls, merging into one line. "You are the truth." A rift opened in the ground, swirling with darkness and the promise of enlightenment. It beckoned with an insidious pull, and I felt myself swaying toward it, drawn in by the forbidden secrets. Just beyond existed truths too terrible for the light, and I was powerless to resist. "Don't!" The woman screamed, her voice slicing through the chaos, but it was too late. In an instant, the earth below me gave way, and I plummeted into the abyss, swallowed whole. A final echo of the child's voice lingered in my ears, now distorted and warped. "Run!" And as I tumbled into the darkness, I realized I was more than merely falling. I was becoming the very darkness itself. The moment the void swallowed me, time ceased to exist. An oppressive weight pressed down on me as I spiraled through an endless tunnel of despair. Bulbous shadows morphed, grotesque faces whispering secrets that sent ice through my veins. A chilling melody arose from the nothingness, a tune that taunted my every fear, imploring me to listen. To succumb as the descent slowed, I landed abruptly on a cold, damp surface. I rolled over, gasping for air. It tasted of iron, laden with the stench of decay and despair. I looked around, my heart racing, illuminating my surroundings with a meager glimmer of defiance. The chamber was expansive, its ceiling obscured by a miasma of black smoke that curled into shapes writhing and twisting, as if alive. Leaning against the walls were hulking silhouettes, vague yet familiar, throbbing rhythmically like a wave of nightmares yearning for transcendence into the waking world. I shuddered, instinctively backing away from them. Not another step. A voice ejected from the murky depths, laced with venom and authority. A figure emerged from the swimming gloom, wearing a police uniform stained with the residue of violence and depravity. His eyes glinted with a predatory sharpness, illuminating the shadows of the nightmares surrounding him. "You trespass in the realm of the damned, and you don't look prepared for the consequences. What is this place?" I stammered, my voice trembling with horror. My mind felt fragmented, reality shifting like quicksand. Warm blood pulsed in my ears, combining with the rhythmic thrumming of my heart. The officer stepped forward, his face an unsettling mask of congenial menace. "You dare ask? You are a harbinger now, and we've been waiting for someone like you, a seeker, a detective of death and forbidden knowledge." He gestured with a hand that seemed both human and monstrous, dripping shadows. "This is where truths rot, where the government shrouds its intentions in horror." An intense gleam in his eyes sent coursing dread through me. Memories of masked faces in the dead of night, of acrid smoke and distant screams flooded back, an image of my police station filled with hushed allegations, lost reports, and burials no one spoke of. "You're lying," I breathed, a weak attempt to ground myself in disbelief. "Oh, but it's the truth you crave, isn't it?" He mocked, revealing a grin that stretched too wide, filled with rows of two gleaming teeth like a predatory beast. "Welcome to the fold. You're one of us now, or will be, anyway." From behind him, the shadows dashed forth, increasing the unsettling ambience. Each form bore witness to torment, eyes that glowed with a hollow hunger, the remnants of the lost seeking solace in the realm of the living. I could hear their whispers, fragmented stories layered over one another, urging me to submit to the inevitable. "3 rules. Seeker," the officer began, his voice steadying, oozing with an unwilling charm. "Abide by them, and you might just survive long enough to glimpse the truth. Break them, and your soul will join the chorus of the damned." Thick silence blanketed the chamber as he continued. "First, do not speak of what you see here. Knowledge is poison. Let ignorance shield you." I swallowed hard, the weight of his warning settling in my gut. "Second, follow their will," he said, gesturing with a nonchalance that suggested a pact made long ago. "The shadows are hungry to reclaim what is theirs. Respect their dominance, or they will feast upon your essence." And then, his smile widened further, stretching the darkness around him. "Finally, should you encounter the reflection of your soul," he paused for dramatic emphasis, "embrace it. Only then can you navigate between the worlds unscathed." A shiver skittered down my spine. "What do you mean, me reflection?" But he merely chuckled, raising a finger to silence me. "You'll find out soon enough." Suddenly, the cavern shivered violently, the walls rumbling as a flickering glow painted a crimson hue across the chamber. Through the haze of shadows, grotesque figures began to take form, contorting and mutating with sinister glee, revealing edges of sharp teeth and glistening eyes. Their whispers lifted from the dark mass, sharp and chaotic, blending into a desperate symphony that resonated with the deepest fears of the human spirit. Join us, they lured, their voices rising and falling like a chilling tide, wrapping around me, enticing me to lean closer, to embrace the horrifying dance. Fool, they'll tear you apart. The officer snapped, his voice slicing through the soft entreaties. You need to make a choice. The shadows shuddered closer, and I suddenly felt the echo of countless pairs of eyes boring into me, own reflection woven into the tapestry of agony and torment. The officer's predatory gaze anchored me in fear, yet the shadows called, promising knowledge and power beyond my wildest imaginings. With an indecipherable mix of dread and curiosity, I stood there, lost on the precipice of calamity, as the cacophony of whispers crescendoed, drowning out my thoughts. Join us, join us, join us. Time slipped through my fingers as I felt a pull of dark force drawing me toward the swirling mass, forcing me to make a choice, and that choice would seal my fate. And in that fragile moment of decision, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection forming in the depths, a pale, haunted visage staring back, eyes wide with terror and a dreadful kind of understanding. Choose wisely, the officer growled, the shadows clamoring behind him, whispering secrets that would drive me to madness. I had to find out the truth, but at what cost? As the darkness surged forward, and the vision of my own reflection spread like oil against water, I felt the room tremble beneath me, the walls alive with anticipation, a silent witness to what was about to unfold. And as I teetered on the knife edge of despair, I could only whisper the words that were on the very tip of my tongue. I choose, but before I could finish, a horrific scream severed the air, my reflection in the shadows warping grotesquely as a dark force tightened around me. Silencing meth shadows roared, and the abyss erupted into chaos, spiraling away everything I knew. The chaos unfurled like the pages of a twisted book, inked in shadows and despair, swallowing the fragmented air around me. I felt a tempest ripple through the chamber, threatening to tear apart the very fabric of reality. The ground quaked beneath my feet, and at the center of the maelstrom, I was paralyzed, caught in a web of shadows that writhed and twisted, standard-defining my very essence. The screams faded momentarily, spiraling into a feverish whisper that filled my mind with menacing certainty. Let go, they hissed, embrace the dark. I could barely distinguish my own thoughts as a weight pressed down on my chest, rendering breath a laborious prayer for release. Just when I felt I might succumb, the shadows parted for a second, revealing a corridor extending into unfathomable darkness, an invitation to stray beyond the precipice of my sanity. Run. The officer's voice sliced through the cacophony, panic lacing his usually unwavering demeanor. His eyes darted to the unfathomable abyss, opening its gaping maw behind me. You can't stay here. You must escape before they claim you. Intuition kicked in with the clarity of freezing water on my spine. I stumbled toward the corridor, propelled by each pressed whisper that egged on the horrors clattering in the shadows. The air grew colder, laden with the scent of decay and the metallic tang of dread. The shadows pursued behind, their claws reaching, yearning to draw me back into the fathomless depths. No. A frail voice screeched from the dark, a haunting echo reverberating against my ears. Images blurred before my eyes. Faces melded into one another, loved ones, colleagues long gone. The grave faces of missing persons rehearsing for the finale of their suffering. Each one wore a look of either despair or furious resolve for justice, their mouths moving in ghostly silence, pleading for recognition, for someone to break the cycle. I pressed forward into the corridor's dark embrace, instinctively seeking the light that flickered like a dying ember within my core. Stay with us, they urged, harmony and discord entwined in their cries, each word peculiar and pressing, longing to unveil secrets left unspoken. My heart raced, hammering against my ribcage as haunting figures danced at the edge of my periphery. But then, I caught a stillness that pierced through the chaotic symphony. A door stood ajar at the end of the corridor, light cascaded from within, draping me like a shroud of hope amidst the surrounding madness. The doorway emanated warmth, beckoning me forward despite the swirling darkness clamoring for my attention. Each shadow writhed like serpents, sharpening my fear. Don't listen. The officer's voice echoed from the depths, his tone now desperate yet resolute. Once you go through that door, there's no turning back. Each chilling word bounced off the walls, igniting a flicker of doubt. Was this the revelation I had been seeking, or another prison to keep me entrapped? But all around me, the figures faded once more, they too silent and forlorn, their hopes lost to an unremitting void. The urgent pull of the light behind the door devoured my attention, and in a moment of reckless abandon, I sprinted forward, the edges of the abyss snatching at my heels. As I reached the threshold, the warmth washed over me, overwhelming, the cold fingers of fear tightening around my heart. Stepping through, I was confronted with a vast chamber, awe-inspiring yet dreadfully familiar. The room was seemingly endless, but it pulsed with something large and breathing, rhythmically expanding and contracting in unison with the shadows that enveloped it. It appeared to be an archive of memories, the walls encased with panels bearing faces of the damned, each locked in an eternal expression of anguish. "Welcome, seeker," a mellifluous voice resonated through the space, soft yet commanding. It seemed to emanate not from a single source, but from everywhere at once, the shadows twisting like whispers in the night. "You have come to explore secrets, haven't you? Who are you?" I stammered, grappling for coherence amidst the overwhelming dread that a figure emerged slowly from the gloom, coalescing into human shape, yet still marked by the otherworldly aura of the dark. The entity's eyes shone like dark stars, beckoning me with a knowing gaze that chilled my blood, intertwining curiosity with a sense of terrible foresight. "Your journey begins anew. Here lies the echo of your dark desires, the reflections of all choices unmade." Behind the entity, shadows writhed in chaotic harmony, revealing scenes etched against the walls, flashes of my past, moments I had sought to repress, twisted narratives of justice lost. They played out in a haunting loop, woven into the very fabric of this cursed realm. "What is this?" I exclaimed, feeling the tight grip of my own choices claw at my soul, rendering me vulnerable. As if answering my desperate plea, the entity tilted its head, an enigmatic smile creeping across its face. "Your reflection is much like a wound that you can't bear to touch. But you must be willing to comprehend, and then choose." Suddenly, a cacophony erupted behind meth officer's warning was but a footnote drowned beneath the tempest of shadows and anguish. The reflection flared into existence, rippling like water, morphing between the sorrow in my heart and the joys I had fled. I caught a fleeting glimpse of myself, one who stood tall and brave, a split second where I had made a difference. But the darkness sharpened, transforming it into a visage racked with guilt and horror. I was not the person I fought to be. "Choose," the voice intoned, echoing in haunting rhythm against every pulse within me. And as I prepared to stand my ground, a horrific scream erupted from the archway of the corridor, the terror of that sound crystallizing into something solid, a tangible reminder of my mortality. My heart raced. I couldn't turn back to witness what was unfolding, but I couldn't ignore it either. With horror gripping my soul, I found myself torn between the frightening torrent of shadows reaching for me and the fractured version of my past lurking in the depths. "Choose," the entity urged again, the chamber pulsating with weighted expectation. The walls trembled in anticipation as I tore my gaze away from my own reflection, grasping that any choice I made was tethered irrevocably to the lurking terror marking me for an eternity. And in that undecided moment, the scream split the air, a crashing crescendo of anguish as the dark space flickered, revealing hands grasping at reality, reaching desperately to pull someone into the abyss. The moment exhaled itself into chaos as I strained to understand what choices lay in my fragmented heart, of silence swallowing my resolve, just as the shadows lunged toward me, merging with the horrific echo of my fears. And there, just a heartbeat away, the darkness collided with me, plunging into a depth of horror where my reflection began to claw back at me, a reflection not merely of who I was, but of what I feared I could become. I felt the darkness close in, and every inch of me screamed with the urgency of choice, as if the entire universe leaned closer, waiting to see what would come of me. Would I embrace my reflection, or succumb to the devastating cries that echoed through the empty halls, leaving behind only shadows of who I was supposed to be? The air thickened, an almost tangible weight that pressed upon my lungs as the shadows converged and swirled around me. Each heartbeat rang like a bell in the oppressive silence, the rhythmic pulse of dread knitting itself tightly around my chest. I could feel the walls of the chamber shifting, the contours of reality warping and bending, as if the very architecture of time and space had turned to liquid. Every breath was a desperate attempt to pierce through the growing darkness. Choose, the entity urged again, its voice now a haunting whisper that caressed the edges of my sanity. The shadows, restless and relentless, shifted shapes, darting in and out of the light, illuminating new horrors that clawed at the corners of my mind. At a sudden flash ignited within the depths of the chamber a scene unfurling like a dark flower blossoming in life's decay. I was back in my past, faces of friends and enemies spinning around me like marionettes, their strings pulled by an unseen puppeteer. I remembered the desperation of that night, the chilling echoes of our voice slaughter before it twisted into betrayal. Justice sought, but justice long abandoned. A flicker caught my eye, a glimmer that rose above the shadows, desperately beckoning. It was my badge, glistening but tarnished, reflecting the halo of choices long gone astray. The images shifted again. I saw myself standing before a jury. The conviction of an innocently condemned echoed through the woods, illuminating faces frozen in time, fear mingling with disbelief. But the darkness responded. It clawed at my thoughts and drew upon the guilt that wrapped around my heart, like vines choking a tree. You were supposed to save them. The whispers weaved through my mind, laced thick with venom, each syllable a reminder of the lives marked by my inaction. With each turn, the shadows roared with newfound energy, a frenzy of anticipation swirling violently, wrapping their fingers tighter around me. My resolve was teetering on the precipice of acceptance, but just as the moment threatened to solidify, the world around me erupted in a cacophony of movement, shifting and folding inwards upon itself, revealing an endless expanse of lost souls trapped in their own choices. This was the consequence of the decisions made, and the endless cycle of seeking redemption. Then came a cacophony unlike any author. A broken wail erupted from deep within the chamber as a figure emerged from the veil of darkness. A woman, clad in tattered clothing and crowned with a sorrowful visage, stepped forward. Her hollow eyes bore witness to horrors I could scarcely fathom, glistening dimly like stars dimmed by a heavy cloud. "Help me," she whispered, teetering on the brink of despair, a soul lost among remnants of choices unmade. "I can't escape. They won't let me go." My stomach twisted, realization clawing its way up my throat. This was the one I had failed, one of many mistaken cries from the web of shadows. The shadows held their breath, waiting for my reaction, their anticipation palpable and suffocating. "Choose." The entity hissed, its voice a frigid gale against my skin, the temperature plummeting in the memory of a life entwined with loss. Before I could process the horror playing out before me, a rumble echoed through the chamber, the walls vibrating with a discordant rhythm. The shadows seemed to lap hungrily at the stricken woman's feet. "They will take you," she pleaded, "if you choose." The darkness pulsed, icy tendrils lashing out, dancing beneath the surface like a tide seeking land. I felt the crush of terror wind around my throat, squeezing like a vice, choking my mind as I fought to break free from the merciless grip. "Decide before they feast." The voice broke through the chaos, sharp as glass cutting through the haze of fear. Another scream broke from the figure, its sound splitting the air around us, a visceral essence manifesting the torment of countless souls caught between decisions and their dreadful repercussions. The walls trembled further, cracking like fragile glass, echoes of dread reverberating through the air. That I felt the pressure of time constricting around me, seconds stretching into a lifetime as the woman's face warped into the very fabric of my guilt, her eyes pleading as she seemed to flicker like an unstable signal. "Choose." Again, the entity's voice rang out, drowning the wails, the shadows vying for my attention with promises of power, choice, and control. But at what cost? The decision hung heavy. It unfurled like a nightmare I had been rehearsing in a sleep long since broken. With each moment that rushed by, anxiety gripped tighter. The frigid boundaries of the chamber pressed down on me like a coffin. And then, from the chaos, a quiet broke forth, a singular clarity amidst a tempest of horror. I had to act before the shadowy tendrils grasped the woman fully. My heart thundered as the shadows surged forward, clawing at the sides of my sanity, while I felt my reflection dark, twisted and full of despair bubble up from my core, ready to claw its way into existence in that final moment. Just as the darkness prepared to swallow us whole, I reached out toward the woman, desperate to grasp her hand and pull her to safety, fully aware that this choice would alter everything. But as our fingers began to bridge the void, a deafening roar erupted from within the shadows, drowning my intentions in horrors untold. And then I felt the pull, that inescapable grasp of darkness, latching onto my being, pulling me down into an abyss where my reflection writhed and howled in agony, merging with the anguished wail of lost souls. There were no absolutes, only choices long repressed that clawed to be seen. As I struggled against the pull, the voices swelled around me, dark laughter mingling with cries of despair, the echoes of my past entwined with every choice I had made. In that moment of suspended horror, my gaze locked onto that woman's face, and as raindrops of anguish tumbled from her eyes, the shadows erupted with a force that threatened to obliterate all choice, and as everything shattered, the darkness whispered its final, haunting promise. Now, the true horror begins. The dimension around me folded in on itself, warping like fabric during a storm, as I descended into the infinite blackness. A cacophony of whispered regrets echoed around me, like banshees mourning their lost pasts, clawing at the frayed edges of my sanity. I felt fingers, shadowy and slick, digging into my skin, urging me down, deeper into oblivion. "She is not the only one," the entity hissed, its voice threading through the darkness like a serpent. "You will witness the many you have wronged. Their cries will be your guide." What guide? My mind was racing. I had come seeking redemption, but the true cost was becoming all too clear. Each heartbeat reverberated like a drum, announcing my encroaching doom. As images began to coalesce from the darkness, or perhaps they were memories, stirred from the depths of my anguished conscience. The first scene materialized: a white room, sterile yet suffocating. A man sat there, bound by the silence of his regrets, his eyes hollow and sunken. "You let me die, you could have saved me," he bellowed, voice echoing in the chamber like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath me. Blood pooled beneath his chair, an indelible mark etched into my mind. A victim of my choice and innocent, left to rot while I pursued power, prestige. "No, no," I cried out, desperate to shield myself from the cascades of despair. But the shadows tightened their grip. They morphed again, pulling away my voice, stripping away my defenses, leaving a gaping maw of dread wide open. Another scene unfolded, this time a child, lost in a labyrinth of darkness, reaching for me with outstretched hands. "Help! Help me!" Her voice was a sharp blade that cut through the veil of shadows. I wanted to lunge forward, to reach the innocent soul, but the entity held fast to my thoughts. "You heard her once, when you turned your back, turning your soul to stone for a fleeting moment of vengeance. Now, you will abide the consequences." Yes, I turned. Shadows erupted from the walls, swirling around me like a storm, feeding off my guilt, the thick, bitter taste of horror coiling in my throat. Faces flitted past me, a grotesque parade of lost lives I had been too blind or too selfish to save. Layla, Mohammed, the innocents, a dreary chant began rising, circling around me, each name punctuated by a pang of regret, all pleading for help. It was a litany that stabbed into me, gutting me with memories I would rather have forgotten. Then, I saw the woman again, hovering at the edge, her form wavering like an image on the verge of destruction. "You cannot save them all," she croaked, her voice the slightest whisper in an avalanche of despair. "You have to choose. They will come for their due, regardless." "What due?" The questions clawed at me, but the shadows surged forth, drowning out clarity with hysteria and chaos. I felt the burden of their memories, each hand swiped across my chest, choking me with their pain. The air thickened to a point where each breath became labored, like inhaling daggers. "Help us!" The shadowy figures coated the floor, writhing like snakes in a gutter, their eyes glistening with desperation as they circled me. Entreaties poured from their mouths, each syllable more poignant than the last, driving me further into madness. The entity erupted into laughter, a sound that echoed with cruel amusement, lifting its cold veil over my heart. Choose who to save, but know that in this life, someone must always pay. The laughter morphed into an ominous chant, reverberating around me as the shadows rose and fell, dancing in a morbid symphony. My mind raced as I remembered the fateful decisions, the truths buried under a mountain of guilt. But as the clamoring faces merged into a single, blinding form, one that spoke of my deepest fear, I found the words that must never surface. I didn't mean to. The chamber roared in response, vibrating with the energies of the lost. And then, a wave crashed around me, the shadows suspended in the electric air, ready to consume all. Choose. The entity roared, and with an excruciating jolt, the whispers morphed into screams. Thousand souls clamoring for release. Before I could process the horror surrounding me, the floor opened up, revealing a chasma swirling vortex below me that beckoned with promises of freedom. But would it be freedom for myself? For the innocent? With tears streaming down my face, I felt the weight of inevitability crashing down. And just as I felt presence shift at my back, the shadows gripped my ankles, dragging me toward the relentless void. As I turned towards the flickering faces, heart-breaking, realizing this was a choice that could seal fates, including my own. Of fate tangled with theirs forevermore. Do not let them take you, the woman's voice urged, a final glimmer peeking through my despair, but the ground beneath me ripped apart with each heartbeat. But the abyss was already hungry, its maw wide open, and just as I made the fateful decision that would either be my salvation or doom, a new voice shattered the chamber, deep and resonant, just above a whisper. Everything comes at a price in you, dear friend, your soul. With that, the shadows released their final grip, and I plummeted into darkness as the last remnants of humanity slipped from my grasp. The ensuing silence crushed me, like the weight of secrets too heavy to bear, spiraling into uncertainty. And just then, a face emerged from the shadows above, smiling, sinister, veiled in a darkness not of this world. Welcome back. Your turn to decide. When I awoke, it felt as if I had been birthed anew, the coldness of the chamber clinging to me like a shroud. The air was dense with echoes of despair, a haunting lullaby that slithered through my mind, urging me to remember. But the weight of confusion muddled my thoughts, filling me with dread as I stared at the warped walls around me. Faces twisted and intertwined, forever trapped in agony, their silent screams chasing me in the recesses of my mind. That I staggered to my feet, standing on the precipice of a world unfurling into chaos. Shadows writhed as vivid recollections of sacrifices made crashed over me like a flood. Each name buried deeper beneath the surface of my consciousness clawed at my chest like jagged claws. Those I could not save, their lives entwined with my decisions, the innocent rotting in oblivion. Do not take too long, seeker, a voice hissed, smooth as silk, but laced with malice. A figure cloaked in darkness, a remnant of the entity that ruled this dreadful realm, now loomed before me. You must choose for yourself now. I stumbled backward, breath hitching in my throat. What do you mean? What choice? Disbelief wrapped around me like a vice, squeezing the air from my lungs. That a sharp grin emerged from the shadows, razor-like and piercing. The truths you refuse to accept, the burdens of all that you've lost, they are here with you now. You are the key, and the lock is fashioned from regret. Confusion spiraled around me like a violent storm. My heart raced as memories flooded unimpacted moments of despair and choices too terrible to remember. I saw myself, once filled with hope and determination, now crumbled under the weight of the very souls whose lives I failed to protect. I didn't choose this path. I never wanted. The figure interrupted, its laughter rippling across the dark expanse. But your choices have already been crafted, like a tapestry woven from the threads of your soul. The lives you've disrupted haunt you like wraiths. They lend strength to others who come seeking. You are but the vessel. My heart sank in realization. It wasn't about me anymore. It never had been. The very shadows threatened to consume me, plunging me into a moral abyss. I had become a pawn, and the game was rigged. Listen closely, the entity continued, the light dimming as it tilted its head. Now, abandon thoughts of absolution. It is time for you to relinquish this shell, for only then will you see. Before I could protest, the walls shifted again. I found myself back in that cursed room, frigid air biting my skin. This time, something felt different. The shadows weren't just whispers anymore, they moved with purpose, an insatiable hunger. The edges of the silhouettes lurked, their forms twisted and grotesque, begging for release. The echoes rose, a symphonic chorus of countless souls, intertwined in a desperate plea. Release us. Help us. Choose the one you will save. The entity commanded, the shadows spilling forward, clawing at me, wrapping around my ankles like shackles. I felt the panic spike as the shadows morphed into faces, their eyes wide with madness and long Jenga parade of the innocent lost to the dark choices of the world. Images splashed like water on the surface of a lake, each face familiar, each scream echoing in my core. People I had loved, strangers I swore to protect. With every heartbeat, I could feel the weight of their lives crashing against my chest. Choose, it taunted again. Will you save the one that means the most, or give yourself willingly? I faced the throng of shadows, their collective misery resonating like a thunderstorm. It all began to click, the weight I carried, the shame I had guided them here by seeking the truth. I felt the shadows tightening around me with their keeper's grip, and realization dawned on me like the sun breaking through clouds. I had a choice. I wasn't merely a bystander, I was the one who could break the cycle. No, I shouted, determination coursing through my veins. I want choose, but the shadows laughed. It was a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. Then choose for all, they hissed. Pressing in closer, venomous glances piercing through the dark, and then, a voice solidified in my mind, my own reflection, the darker side of me that I had kept hidden. Save yourself and absolve the burden, or lose them forever. With that, I fell into a harsh realization. Choice was an illusion, and my decision would determine who among the lost would be cast into oblivion and who might find peace. But it wasn't about sacrifice. It was about facing the truth of who I had become, the reflection I had ignored, the darkness that already lingered in my own heart. And in that moment, I understood. I was not only the seeker of knowledge, I was a keeper of their fates. Okay then, I screamed, rallying the essence of every fragment within me. I choose to save, but as the words danced on the tip of my tongue, I was suddenly jerked back, the shadows clenching with impossible force, constricting me in their grip. You will not take this from us. You're ours now. They roared, their voices melding into one strangled murmur, a dark anthem wrapping around me like a net. The darkness clawed at my soul, a viscous entity that threatened to rip me apart. Reality twisted to escape was futile. Whatever solid ground I thought I had slipped away, dragging me back into the ravenous depths. No, I screamed into the void. I will not give in. But then I felt Ida's sudden surge of warmth, an ethereal radiance piercing through the oppressive shadows surrounding me. My choices rippled through the chaotic abyss. A true battle was brewing, as the light fought to break free of the clutches of darkness. I could feel the agony beneath me shift into a torrent of screams, clawing to retain their semblance of identity. And then, without warning, clarity surged through me. I choose all of them. The moment I surrendered, the shadows stilled. The darkness that encased me shattered like fragile glass as light poured in through the cracks. Hope illuminated the chamber as lost souls floated closer, their shadows merging in a brilliant tapestry of understanding. You're free. I cried out as hearts intertwined, love forged from sacrifice suffusing the air. But in the flurry of embracing the light, the entity's booming laughter reverberated against the walls, clearer than ever. You think this concludes your tale? You will always choose. And with a sickening twist, the radiant light began to flicker, teasing out the shadows that entwined me, pulling me back toward the darkness, toward the torment of eternal choices yet again. I staggered as the old haunting memories clawed back into view, weaving themselves into the fabric of my reality. It never ends, I whispered as despair washed over me anew. The shadows twinkled like stars, a constant reminder of my burden. My choice would never truly be escaped. They taunted me with echoes of the unending dark. I turned, ready to flee, yet as I did, the cold realization sliced through me, shudder suddenly convulsing in the depths of my heart. Now, I too would join the company of ghosts, as I'd become yet another shadow in this realm of suffering, forever seeking to be redeemed. And as the darkness began to swirl around me again, a final echo resonated in my mind, a distant whisper that sent chills down my back. Welcome back, Seeker. Your turn to decide.